Hi, my name is Kristen and this is Kristen Craves Books. So today I'm back with the collab. The wonderful Queen of Collabs, Becky, has put together an awesome group of people to do this collab today, and it's such a fun idea. And it's called the ABCs of Romance. And the point of the video is just to talk about romances in some shape or form. I think some people are doing the ABCs of Romance in terms of different tropes or themes or authors' last names or just the book titles in general, just to pick a theme and go for it. And I thought I would do standalone romances today because if you're like me at all, you can get overwhelmed by series pretty easily, especially romance. I find that a lot of the romances that I come across are part of series, even though a lot of the time you can just read them as if they're standalone. I do like to have just a standalone, get that satisfaction, the story is over, I don't have to worry about, great, now I'm in the middle of 80-something series. I haven't even done that. I know people have spreadsheets where they track the series that they are in the middle of, and I should do that, but I don't want to embarrass myself because I'm in the middle of so many, and I'm sure the majority of them are romances. So today I'm going to talk about some standalones if you're like me, and these are from all genres of romance. I've got speculative, contemporary, there might even be a little bit of a horror too. Some are a bit of a reach because you get to certain letters and it's difficult. And of all of the books on my list, there's only one that's on my TBR, and I think that's for K. I don't know why that was so difficult. I haven't read a standalone romance that starts with K. I've definitely read some within series, but not a standalone. All of the rest I have actually read, so I was quite proud of myself, and I will leave a link to the playlist that I'm sure Becky's going to put together of everybody else that is doing this, because check them out. You're going to get a ton of recommendations today. 26 books in every video. There are quite a few of us participating, all different ideas, some really creative ideas, and it's just going to be a fun time. Great way to discover some new booktubers as well. So I'm excited about it, and we all have very different tastes when it comes to romances as well, so that's just fun. And of course some of these I own, some of them I don't. I'm just going to say a couple lines about each of them. For A, we have The Art of Scandal by Regina Black. This is a debut and an author I want to keep an eye on. I loved this. It is an age gap. She is 40 and he is 26, and she is going through a divorce, a really rocky marriage. Her husband is a politician. He is a well-known mayor, well-respected, but not a great guy. And the person she's having a romance with is an artist, and they just have an intense connection. It's steamy. There's lots of great chemistry, some drama as well coming with that setup, and it's one I continue to think about. And I think she has a book coming out in the summer, and I can't wait to get my hands on it. In Kristen fashion, it wouldn't be a video without a T. Kingfisher, Bry and Roses, one of my favorites. Very, very short. I actually think this is a good place to start if you want to get into some T. Kingfisher because it's short and it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling that is done well. I don't tend to love Beauty and the Beast retellings. I actually very, very rarely like them because as much as I like Beauty and the Beast, the whole setup of that is a little bit icky. This one's handled well because it's T. Kingfisher. Everything in the house is sentient and it all makes sense, and I think the twist that it takes with the basic setup of Beauty and the Beast is really interesting. If you're a gardener, I think particularly you're gonna like this one. And it's also a great story about sisterhood, one that I really need to reread because it continues to be one of my favorites in my top 5 from T. Kingfisher for sure. For C, we have The Cottage Around the Corner, and this is by D. L. Soria. I actually read this for book club with Becky, the Black Hat Book Coven, so if you're into witchy contemporary books that feel like Gilmore Girls, this is a perfect one. It's pretty much You've Got Mail, but it's witchy, and they have spell shops. It's a romance between a witch and a mage. There is kind of a sentient broom. It's almost like a robot vacuum, but it's a broom that's alive, and I love that. There's some great side characters, some great family stuff. It was a cute one. D is Devon and Chris Plan a Wedding by Chensia C. Higgins, and this is a sapphic romance. It centers around a reality TV show, and I know we have a lot of romances that do that, but this is my favorite of all the ones that I've read so far. And the whole point of this is that you sign up for this reality show. You have to pretend to be getting married. If you can convince your family to come to your wedding and that they buy into that this is a real relationship, a real marriage, you will win some money, and you have to come and say, I'm just marrying this person that I just met. So during the setup, Devon and Chris get paired together, and we see them fooling their families, fake dating, but really having feelings for each other as the story goes on. And you see them like pick out their wedding cake, go to tastings, try on wedding dresses with each other's families, and they both have different family situations. One of them is fully out to their family and one of them isn't, and is using this reality show to come out. And you see how their families react to everything, and it's actually really fun and silly and sweet, and I love it. I think it's highly underrated. Speaking of Beauty and the Beast retellings, there are 2 Beauty and the Beast romance retellings that I love. One is Bry and Roses, and the other is Entreat Me by Grace Draven, who's quickly becoming one of my go-to fantasy romance authors because I'm struggling. I'm still figuring out what I like in fantasy romance, what kind of authors I like, and Grace Draven is up there. And I appreciated the take of the tropes in Beauty and the Beast and the twist that she made in this one. Again, this is a lot about sisterhood, and our main character in this one is actually older than Belle would be in Beauty and the Beast, and she is now a widow, and you see her just wanting to be independent but embracing her sexuality as well. And I really liked the Beast character in this one. And there's another side romance that is really more of the main focus at some points than the Beauty and the Beast, Belle and the Beast kind of romance, even though that is what hooked me on the story. I thought that they were great, and it doesn't fall into the typical pitfalls of a Beauty and the Beast story. And I just really like Grace Draven's writing, though I do prefer Radiance. It's part of a series, and I think that this is still a good place to start for Grace Draven. F is Forget Me Not by Julie Soto, and I kind of just read this one on a whim. I think I was given an e-arc or an ALC of it, and I wasn't sure about it at first because it is a Raylo fan fiction, but I don't know that I actually really thought too much about that as I was reading it. It was my first introduction into Raylo fanfic, and I have seen the Star Wars movies, but I wasn't familiar with all the lore behind the shipping of those two characters, so it didn't really take me out of the story. And I did like the Grumpy Sunshine thing. I don't think I'd want to read too many Raylo kind of books, but I liked this one. And just like with Devon and Chris Plan a Wedding, I like any books centered around weddings, especially romances. And this is following these two characters. It's a second chance romance. She is a wedding planner and he is a florist, and we see his chapters in the past when they are together and hers in the present where they are no longer together, but they both end up having to work on this wedding together, and there is a reality show aspect in it as well, and I just really liked it. I thought it was great. G is The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, and this is by Axio. This is the stunning fairy lewd edition of this. If you are more of a fairy tale reader, you like folklore, you like something more whimsical, I think that this is a really beautiful fantasy romance. It's set in a world where this community has to sacrifice a young woman to the sea god every year in order to appease them, and our main character's brother's bride is chosen, but in order to save her, our main character sacrifices herself, and she ends up in this underground world that is very whimsical, and there might be a romance that happens there, and it's just all about the vibes and the atmosphere of this one. And it feels like you're reading a bedtime story. That is kind of the vibes that you get from this, and I'm always looking for something like that, and I think that it doesn't get much better than this. H, we have Homefield Advantage by Dahlia Adler, and actually I don't talk about this book enough. This is a sapphic YA romance, and it's a romance between the high school quarterback and a cheerleader. There were some things about the relationship and the dynamics between the two of them that didn't always sit right with me, but felt very true to life and what teenagers would go through and how they would navigate a relationship when they're trying to discover their sexuality, and maybe they're hiding the relationship from their friends and trying to cover things up, and it's not always the healthiest thing, but it felt so real, and I think a lot of teens probably go through this, and it's actually a book that I haven't really thought about in a long time, so I was happy when I was going through this list to come across this one again so I could talk about it. I is Immortal, and this is by Sue Lynn Tan. I just talked about this in my last video. Not my favorite thing of all time, and look how shiny this cover is. Not my favorite thing of all time, but I'm glad I read it, and I'm glad it exists, and I love the world that Sue Lynn Tan has created. This is a standalone that's set in the same world as the one in Daughter of the Moon Goddess, but you don't need to read that to read this one, though I still would. And this follows a girl whose grandfather dies in the beginning, and she is left to take the throne, and she now has to bend to the will of this immortal queen, but she doesn't want to do that, and she gets wrapped up in this whole thing, and she ends up having a romance with the god of war. And that's probably all you need to know about this one. I think that there's a decent balance between the politics and the plot and the romance, but I wish it all went a little bit deeper, but I'm still glad that I read it. The writing is really beautiful, as you'd expect from Sue Lynn Tan, and I think a lot of people will probably like this one more than I did. Just it's not my kind of love interest, is what I will say. J is Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating, and this is by Christina Lauren. Now, Christina Lauren has been very hit or miss for me, and I haven't read from them in years, and this is one of their books that stands out to me. and I think it was one of the few books that introduced me to Friends to Lovers and did it in a way that I liked, so I will always appreciate it for that. This is following these, I think they're college best friends, and I think it's 10 years or something later, and they're still really close, and they decide to set each other up on dates, and obviously they just are not going well, and they end up together. That's the premise of this one, and I think it's a cute idea, and it's one of like the classic old school Christina Laurens that I know a lot of people like, and I think that this is one of their best. So I struggled with J, so I was happy to come across this one. Now for K is the letter that I haven't read yet. I can't believe that. It is The Kiss Countdown by Etta Easton. Is the one that I came across. It is actually one I really want to read. She seems to be getting more and more popular, and she's writing these books that all center around astronauts. There's a lot of conversation about space happening online with Katy Perry going to space, so that has been interesting to read about. So maybe I will read an astronaut romance, and this one looks really cute. So I think she's an event planner, he's an astronaut. They meet up in a coffee shop. She accidentally spills a drink on him. They have like a meet cute. Then they end up in a situation where they decide to fake date. Who knows how that is set up, but I always love a good fake dating story, and give me an astronaut. So I'm excited to try that one. L is A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall, and I love Alexis Hall, but a lot of his books are parts of series, so I was excited to find this one. And even though I would be up for a sequel to this story, I am happy it is a standalone for the purposes of this video. It says, war tore them apart, chance brought them together, love could set them free. And this is actually one of the few historical romances that I have read, though I'm going to try to read some in May because there is a readathon that I have signed up for, and I'm sure a lot of the hosts are participating in this collab as well. And it is centered around historical romance, and it is a genre I want to try more from, but I have a feeling that I started with one of the best, and it's going to be difficult to top this one. It actually follows Viola, who is trans. She goes to war with her best friend and is presumed dead, and she uses this opportunity to create a life where she can be truly herself, and through a series of events she ends up reconnecting with her best friend. He doesn't recognize her at first, and there are feelings there because he's in deep grief over his loss, and he is Duke. And it's very good. It is on the longer side, but I devoured it. I thought it was really well done. I think that Alexis Hall has dipped his toes into more historical. I think I might actually have one on my Kindle, so that might be a good one for the readathon, but yeah, love this. M is The Maiden the Crocodile by Jordan Ifueko. Much like with Immortal, this is a fantasy romance set in the same world as Ray Bear, which is one of my favorite series of all time, but it's a standalone just in that same world, so it counts. And this was one of my best books of 2024, Jordan Ifueko. Though she hasn't written a lot, she never disappoints me, and I love her. This is following Small Sade, and she actually has vitiligo, and she is in an orphanage and she's aging out of it. That's how the story starts, and she's given very little money to get to the capital city and try and find a job. So she's hoping to be a maid, and she meets somebody that takes her on, and the story goes on from there. And there is a crocodile god, and I'll just leave it at that. I loved it. For N, we have Not Another Love Song by Julie Soto, and I'm now realizing I have 2 Julie Soto books on this list, but I think that's because she tends to write standalone romances, and those are hard to find, hence the point of this video, and I do like them. This one was not my favorite. I don't like it as much as Forget Me Not, but I still think it's solid, and I love romances that follow musicians, and those are harder to find, and in this case they're both part of an orchestra. And it's a hate to love romance. They are competing to be first chair of this orchestra, and he's more famous than she is. He was like part of a band, and she was actually a fan of his, so that is coming into play in it as well. The romance I wasn't rooting for quite as much, but I liked her story and seeing how she really comes into her own and her own confidence and stuff like that. So that part of it I really liked. You have to really be a music fan to appreciate this one though, I think, because there's a lot of talk about the orchestra and playing the violin and that kind of stuff. O is for Out of Office. This is by A.H. Cunningham. If you're looking for a good summary read, I think this one is perfect. This is an author who I am really wanting to follow. She has a book coming out at the end of this month that I think is also a standalone, so I love that. A sensual vacation romance exploring what happens when you step out of the office, take a chance on yourself, and discover your deepest desires. So Genevieve is on a holiday, but it's a work trip. She meets a man who is her driver when she's on this holiday. Where are they? I forget now. They are in Panama, and they have a vacation romance, and you always think a vacation romance is not going to last. Their feelings run deep and they try and make it work, and we see their struggles with that and how she starts to realize where her priorities lie and maybe work isn't everything. And I thought it was really beautiful. P is one I just read this year. It's called Playing Flirty by Shamez Patel, and there's a storyline in this one where we're talking about work harassment that I don't think was handled particularly well. So if that is something that would bother you, I think you should know that going in. But the rest of it I really liked. It is following these two characters who are into video games, board games. He is a video game developer, and I think it's once a week, her and her friends get together and they play board games, and the romance is like hate to love, grumpy sunshine with one of her friends' brothers. So it's a bit of a forbidden thing. There's some secrets happening there. There's reveals, but they're pretty obvious as you're reading it. It's not an overly complicated story. It's about a great friendship group, and I thought a lot of it was really cute. It's a good afternoon read. I listened to the audiobook and I enjoyed that. Q was hard. This is a bit of a stretch. A lot of the books that start with Q, the romances that start with Q, they're like queen of something, queen's this, and those are all fantasy romances that are part of series. Even my TBR, I couldn't find anything that started with Q that is a standalone. So I went with The Queen of Hearts. This is by Kimmery Martin, and I would call this more contemporary than romance, and it's more about friendship than it is romance, though there's a side plot that is romantic, and it's for fans of Grey's Anatomy and the romance kind of storylines you would get in Grey's Anatomy that are more side plots but still compelling. And it is set in a hospital, and there is a lot of drama. So if that is something you're looking for, I don't find we find a lot of that in fiction. This is an older book, but I still remember it like it was yesterday. So if you're looking for something like that, I think that this is a good one to try. R, we have Ready or Not by Cara Bastone, who I think is another author that is writing standalone romances right now. And this is one that took me by surprise because I thought I would hate it because there is surprise pregnancy in this. But you as a reader know that going in. I think what I don't like is when you as a reader are also surprised. The whole premise of this one is she has a one-night stand and ends up pregnant. And you see her have a romance. I don't even want to tell you who the romance is with. So we're following her through her 9 months of pregnancy and her relationship with her best friends, having to tell her family, deciding to have this baby and what that means for her life in New York. So I really thought it was well done, and I was shocked by it. It was my most surprising book of 2024. For T, I went with That Summer Feeling by Bridget Morrissey, and this is a sapphic romance, and it is summer camp for adults. If you miss the feeling of summer camp, if you're somebody who didn't get to go to summer camp as a kid and you kind of want the nostalgia of that or the feelings of that, but with adult characters, I think that this is a really, really fun one. Our main character is recently divorced. On a whim, she meets this couple and they invite her to go to their summer camp, and she decides, why not? I need a change of scenery. She goes, she meets a woman there, they're in the same bunk. You get what happens here. They play summer camp games. It's just very cute. Then for you, we have something that's a completely different vibe, and this is called The Undead Truth of Us. It is by Brittany S. Lewis. This is YA. It's a little bit more on the horrific side. We are following zombies in this one, but it's more of a commentary, and I thought it was so well handled. Our main character's mom has become a zombie, and she's been terrified of them ever since. And then she meets a boy, I think his name's Bo, and he becomes kind of a half zombie, and her feelings about the monsters change in relation to him. And it's just really beautifully written. I think it's wildly underhyped and deserves more attention, and I should be better about talking about it and trying more from this author. But as I sit here thinking about it, I just remember how moved I was. For V, I have Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Canas, and this is probably less romance than a lot of the books on this list, but I still think it is worth mentioning, and it's really well done, and there's not as much vampires as you would expect either. It's sort of friends to lovers. It's set in 1800s in Mexico, and you see these two as children, and they're very, very close, but something happens where he believes that she has died and she thinks that he has abandoned her, but they end up reconnecting as adults and navigating the betrayal that they both feel and the grief and the shock of it all. But there is also a war going on as this is happening, there are creatures that seem to be vampires threatening everybody. They're on the run and they have to work together. And this is another author who I have to try more from, and this got a lot of attention when it came out, and I think that it deserved it. W, we have Where the Dark Stands Still by A.B. Poetex. This is a fantasy romance, and I think that this is highly, highly underrated. I ate this up. I think that this is so beautiful, but it's very, very me. And I will call this one a love story. That's what I'm going to call this one. It is YA, but it does not shy away from handling some difficult topics. It's based on folklore, and there's like a sentient house. Our main character is magic, and she's kind of ostracized from her community. She runs into the forest. She comes across this house. There's like a beast-like character who lives there, and he lets her stay, though he's very annoyed by her. The house is sentient and is talking to her and actually likes her. But there's a lot more that goes on. There's a lot of action that's happening. It's very, very complicated. Some interesting reveals as well, and I just thought it was brilliant. Now, you know X was going to be hard. So I went for the Poetex by Elizabeth Acevedo. I don't even know that there's that much romance in here. There's a little bit. It's more about like first love conversations. It is told like a poem. Listen to this one on audiobook. It's fantastic. I'm sure you probably have. This one had a lot of hype and it deserves it. But it's worth mentioning again. It's more about just being a teenager and the pitfalls that come with that, especially being a black teen, being a girl, and your relationship with your mom, your first love, all that stuff. And she is just participating in the slam poetry competition, and it's one that I still think about and I think is very poignant and still withstands the test of time. And yeah, I think I need a copy for my shelves. I've been saying that for years. And I love Elizabeth Acevedo, everything she does. We went for one of my favorites. This is a controversial one. Not everybody loves this one, and I understand, but it's You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Kweki Emezi. Our main character is going through grief. She has lost her husband, and in the opening chapters, you see her just trying to move on. She doesn't want to form emotional connections with people, just physical ones, and that's great and fine. But as the story goes on, obviously, she meets somebody and it becomes a deeper connection. It obviously has a very tropical setting. I don't even want to tell you who the romance is with, to be honest with you. You just have to accept that this is going to be dramatic. Accept that you won't agree with all of her decisions, though I personally understood a lot of them. Loved her best friend in this one. I just love that Kweki Emezi writes from a wide range of genres and they always nail it. And I hope that they write more romances because I really like their perspective. And I think they do something unique, even if not everybody is going to appreciate it, and I get it. And then for Z, to finish this video off, another hard one, I went for the ZWord. This is by Lindsay King Miller. This is another zombie book. I've got 2 zombie books on this one. Again, I'm kind of stretching it with the romance. Are there romances? Would we call them romances? There are escapades, there are smutty scenes. This is sapphic, but it's following people just trying to survive like a zombie apocalypse. So would I say the romances are at the forefront? No, but people get together, and I think that it counts. It says packed with action, humor, sex, and big gay feelings. The ZWord is the queer zombie land you didn't know you needed, and I think that about sums that one up. So there you have it. Not too bad. A few cheats, a few stretches, but I think it all worked out, and I can't wait to see everybody else's videos. If you have any suggestions for some of these, if you have like a favorite standalone romance that you think I should try, I would love to hear it because I'm always looking for those as well. If you've read any of these, I'd love to hear your thoughts on them. And yeah, check out everybody else's videos because that is what I will be doing on the day that this is posted. That is how I was spending my Easter, because you're seeing this on Easter, which is fun. So thanks again to Becky for asking me to collab. I'm always down for it, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.